when we were first getting on, and I don't
Yeah,
know what's going on.
I don't know.
It's okay. We
And
can just say you wanted to keep an air of mystery.
That's right.
I don't know
Aram,
what's. I
is that
yeah
how?
yeah. I can't see you. I can see you, but I've got my camera on. Oh, I tell you probably why.
There
There
you
we
go.
go. Just open the
I
window
was
on the
thinking it was
computer.
probably the
Simple.
camera cover.
I've just had no AC upstairs, so I'm a little challenged. I've had the guy told me I have to buy a new furnace.
I just did that, and it
Oh, you
was
did?
painful. I
Oh,
did like a month ago. Yeah,
how much did you have to pay, Katie? A lot of money,
10
right?
10,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
My condolences. Wow.
yeah, I know. But our old one lasted much longer than it should have. So
Yeah,
there's
mine
that.
was 89. 89. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get started. Aram, I think you're the only person on here I don't know, so I wanted to find out um, what kind of artist are you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. I'll come on camera for a sec. I just have like
Oh,
the
I
most
do know
unflattering
you.
lighting.
I know
Surprise.
you.
My
Yeah.
name's Adam, where as much as the R might lead people astray, it's more like you pretend it's a D. So it's pronounced Eden, and my last name is
Adam.
even more difficult, so I just left that off and put something fun instead. Um,
Awesome. Okay, I will try to remember that from now on. Adam. And
my
you
art.
are a mime? Magician? Something in that realm?
So you're in the right galaxy with the mime. So I'm a writer, storyteller, but probably these days somewhat more known as a jester. That's what I spend most of
Yes.
my
Yes.
performing energy on. Sammy Sylvester, the greatest of jesters, and I do interactive call response games that help will kind of trick people into seeing how clever they are, make people feel
Awesome.
seen and valued and important as royalty.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, good, good. I know we've met before, but good to see you again. Adrian, I think you're new to the crowd. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick? I just like everybody, when it's a small group like this, I like people to know who else is in the room.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's good to be here. I am an arts strategist and cultural producer. Um, I have a background in public art specifically and public um, temporary experiential art, and was most recently in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and have recently started diving in to the local arts scene, um, and am happy to be part of this group.
Awesome. I see another new name, Fraser. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. I just found this through the email list.
Awesome. All right. What kind of artist are you?
Multimedia, I am a musician, music producer, DJ, and I also do some visual art and 3D art.
Cool. All right. All right. Well, and then I know Shady and Bridget and Naris, and this is such a small community. The longer you're here, you'll know these folks too if you don't already. So I am going to get started. I'm going to go over, the general information for the grant, and then I'm going to do some FAQs towards the end. When I'm sharing my screen, I can't see you. So if you don't mind, if you have questions as we're going, maybe note them. And then at the end, we'll have time for your questions. But if you like raise your hand or something, I'm not going to be able to see you. So, and let me get through the presentation because I probably will answer the questions that you have. So I am going to share my screen. And just as a reminder, this is the presentation for the artist project grant. So just so that you know you're in the right place. Excuse me. We did have a training earlier this morning for the grassroots grant, which is for organizations and schools. That was recorded. It's now posted on the website on the grants page. So if you missed that and you're involved in an organization, feel free to give that a watch. And then this one also, if you can't stay the whole time, I think it'll go about an hour. This will also be recorded and posted on the website as well. So I'm going to get going. Again, we're here to talk about the artist project grants for this upcoming fiscal year, which begins July 1 and runs through June 30 of 2027. So we have two primary annual grants that we administer every year. The first one is the grassroots program that I mentioned earlier. And these are the grants that go to our arts organizations and our schools. And then we have the artist project grants. And historically, those have been funded by Orange County only. And this is a big, big change for this year that I am really excited about. The state, the grassroots program is the state funding that we receive as the county partner with our state arts council. Grassroots is the program that gets state arts funding into all 100 counties, even the most rural of counties. It's a model that is replicated around the country. It's very effective, but one bummer about it historically was that it could not go to individual people. It could only go to organizations, and that is a change that they have made starting this year. So our state money can be granted to individual artists, and I'm really excited because I feel like, artists are the ones with the flexibility and also the creativity to just come up with like truly unique programs and projects that are so unique to our community because they live here in the community and what this community is into. So I am so excited to see what comes from this, and I'm going to explain a little bit more how it's all going to work shortly. So this year we're combining all the money together. Usually this $28,800 for the local arts grants is separated out, and we only have that much to give all the artist applicants that get chosen to be funded. And, when I first started 10 years ago, if we got 4 applicants a year, we were doing good. And this program has gone through the roof over the years. It's become extremely competitive, slacked off a little bit in the pandemic, of course. But as of last year, I would say it's back up to where it was. And usually we end up funding somewhere between 20 and 30% of the applicants. But now that we've got more money to play with, then, we'll be able to fund more artist applications. We still have to adhere to the funding priorities of the state. And that first funding priority is always going to be our arts nonprofits. And, it is our job to get funding to those organizations. We're one of the few funders that can provide them with operations support. So that's always going to be the first priority with the state money. But, as we host our panels and divide everybody into these different areas of expertise, we're going to see where, rather than looking solely at the organizations and figuring out how to slice and dice that, and then solely at the artists, we're going to kind of look at everybody together as a group and see how the scores shake out. So it'll be interesting, and I'm excited to see what happens. So our total that we've got, I think, to disperse this year is 106,959. And I say I think, and you'll see that asterisk next to OC outside agencies. That is because that 29,711 has been allocated by the county to our grants program the last several years. They removed arts from the outside agencies program, which was a good thing. It would allow arts organizations to apply to an arts grantor instead of a human services grantor. But that amount has not grown since they did that. And actually this year it was on the chopping block. You know, the county, all our municipalities, everybody's going into a terrible budget year. And, you know, we are not unique in that. And of course, the arts always end up on the chopping block. But yeah, I think honestly, every county department is this year, so it's not unique to us. I believe that we have gotten through okay this budget process. I will know for certain on June 16th when the budget passes. So if the budget passes as I understand it right now, we will have that full almost $107,000. And there's a chance something might still happen and we will have $30,000 less than that. So just giving you a heads up there. It's happening. Our timeline, the grants are open now. They opened on June 1st and they will be open through the end of the month, Tuesday, June 30th. They will close at 11:59 p.m. We will notify you in August. Our panels all take place over the course of July. And then in September or October, we'll bring everybody to a county commissioners meeting for a presentation to acknowledge you and, you know, also inform the commissioners about all the great work that you're doing. So eligibility, all projects and programs have to take place in Orange County. It's okay if you're not an Orange County resident, but the program that you're applying for has to take place in Orange County. And this is this really is like a hard and fast guideline that I cannot be flexible about. Even if you're like a half a mile over the county line, if you're not in Orange County, we can't fund you. And I know that that in some ways is ridiculous because you're like half a mile over the county line, but you know, it's money that has been allocated by Orange County government for Orange County residents and allocated by the state for Orange County. And the state also allocates money for Alamance and Durham counties. So you know, we all have our funding pool and we've got to adhere to those geographic guidelines, you know, boundaries. It needs to incorporate the community. The whole premise of this grant program is to get artist-led programs and projects out in the community. And we'll talk more about what that means in a minute. The programs and projects have to take place sometime between July 1 of this year and June 30 of next year. That means that if you've got a project coming up in July, you know, you might not find out until late August that you got a grant. And at that point, it will be a reimbursement grant to you, and that is totally allowed. I know it makes it more difficult on your end if you've got, you know, a timeline you're trying to stick to and it happens to be midsummer, but it's just the way our cycle works out. So and then this grant program is for either individual artists or unincorporated groups of artists. If you're affiliated with a nonprofit organization, and this is a program or project of that nonprofit organization, you have to apply through the grassroots grant. That application is much different. You know, it's for nonprofits, so we have to ask for lots of financial data and 990s and all of that stuff. Whereas with, you know, individual beings, the application is much simpler. So keep that in mind, because I know a lot of folks. Now, if you happen to be employed by a arts nonprofit, but this is like, you know, you yourself wanting to do this project on your own in the community, then that is absolutely valid. So some other guidelines: artistic merit is the most important factor. You know, we have panels of experts in all different areas of the arts, and, you know, the artistic merit and quality is extremely important. And artistic merit and quality also means many different things. We're not talking about, you know, someone judging art through the lens of a gallery curator. You know, we're looking at people in their lived experience and their cultural background. And merit and quality can mean a lot of different things. So the maximum request for these grants is $3,000. The last several years, the board has chosen to either go all or none. I think actually that might have been different last year. It's up to the board. Sometimes they will decide we're going to fund equal to the score. So if NARIS scores a 90 and asks for $3,000, NARIS is going to get 90% of $3,000. Although sometimes they decide we're just going to select a smaller pool of applicants and fully fund them. So it just kind of depends on if they're wanting to give more money to fewer people or less money to more people. A match is encouraged. So this means if you get $3,000 from us, you've got $3,000 of your own skin in the game. But it doesn't necessarily have to be cash. It could be in-kind donations. So if you're putting on a performance somewhere and you've got, you know, the Arts Center and Carborough willing to donate you their theater for the night, the cost, the value of that space rental that is being donated to you can count towards that match. It could also be your own money that you're putting towards the project, or maybe you have other funders. So it could be a wide variety of resources that go towards that match. And again, it is not required, but applicants that do have a match, typically I find tend to score higher because it just shows that you've got skin in the game. So one, you know, important difference between this grant program and other ones we are involved with is that this is all about artist-led community programs and projects. So there has to be that community component. We have other grants that are solely for you as a practicing artist. If you need new equipment, or you need, you know, you're publishing a book and you need an editor, or you want to go to a conference and you need travel money. The Emerging Artist Grant and the Artist Support Grant that we partner with Durham Arts Council on, that is the point of those grants. But this one is different. This one really is about community projects, and it has to have that community component in order to be eligible. That doesn't mean to say that you can't do both. You know, you could go to a conference and ask for grant funding from us in order to be able to go, and then you could come back here and host a free artist talk and, you know, show other artists in the community what you learned. So there's lots of different ways that you could kind of incorporate like a give back and then also get something out of it, solely for yourself at the same time. One other tip is to provide proof of partnerships. My rule of thumb is if you mention another organization or you mention another artist, get them to write a letter of support so that it shows that, you're not just kind of wishful thinking, like you've actually reached out to this person and they're excited and jazzed about your project and they're going to write you a letter of support, or that, you've gotten confirmation from the Art Center that they are willing to donate the space because they believe in your project. That's going to help your application a lot. So what the grants will fund, first and foremost, professional artist fees. I always encourage that to be your ask whenever possible because it's just non-controversial. It's not up for debate. Other areas like marketing, everybody tends to have an opinion about it. And it's like, why are they asking for money to market their program that way? They should be doing it this way. Or, well, that's really the only example actually that I always see people have strong opinions about. So I probably should actually just take it off of here. I would recommend not asking for marketing and publicity money. These other areas, much less controversial, but hands down, the one area that everybody can get behind is paying artists. So if you can, use your other matching resources for these other expenses and ask us for money to pay people, that's going to be a really, positive, that's going to be received positively. And I'm sorry right now, my brain is fried. We're in the middle of moving back into the Eno mill and I'm tired, y'all. So bear with me. Artist travel and training expenses. So again, you can ask us for expenses to go take part in a professional development opportunity, and then just you need to figure out a way to bring it back to the community and pass on what you have learned. Supplies, if you're a muralist, I mean, I can't imagine anybody would offer to paint a free mural. That's that's a very expensive endeavor, but I'm just using that as an example. If you're a muralist and you need some new piece of equipment, maybe your give back is doing a cool new mural somewhere in town. So I'm just kind of spitballing. Some things that they will not fund. We cannot fund food and beverages. We can't fund school supplies. In theory, the schools should be providing the school supplies. So we can't, that would be double funding the schools. We're already, a big chunk of Orange County's funding goes to our schools. So we need this funding to go to other things. Now, getting artists in our schools is absolutely allowed. Usually that's coming from the school system or a PTA group, something like that. But if you happen to have a great relationship with a local school and you want to write a grant to be an artist in residence in that school, that would be a wonderful request. However, I will say, especially with schools and especially if you're working with kids, you really do need to have those letters of support showing that, you're approved by the school to come in and work with their children. One thing it will not fund is rent here at the Eno Mill, just because that's kind of sketchy. We would be giving you money that would then turn around and come back to us, and that feels like a conflict of interest. So we've just ruled that out. And then art therapy. This is also a tricky one. if you're a licensed art therapist and you want to do a program utilizing your expertise and art therapy license, that is not allowed because we are not equipped to evaluate that. Because that is a healthcare occupation. It is out of our wheelhouse. However, if you're an art therapist and you want to do a program in the community that is not therapy, I almost did it again. It makes it sound like I'm calling it therapy, and it's not. It is therapy. If you're wanting to go into a community and do art making, art making is therapeutic, but you're not necessarily putting on your art therapist hat and working with patients and clients, working through their stuff. You're doing an art making activity for the, physical and mental well-being of the group. So I know that that's a little confusing. Same goes for individual artists. If an artist had permission to go into a healthcare setting and do art making, not art therapy, that is allowed. Again, we would definitely want letters of support from that healthcare setting, endorsing your idea, but that is allowed. It's really just not using that art therapy license that you have because we are not equipped to evaluate it. So speaking of evaluations, all applicants are reviewed by panels. We have a visual arts, performing arts, and a literary arts panel. We also have I was going to say we have a financial review panel, but that's not relevant to this grant. That's just for our organizational grants. Our panels are members of our advisory board, and then we also bring in guest panelists every year, usually prior grant recipients, or, a lot of times I use the expertise at UNC. And we do that both to have, if I see one year that we have a lot of film applicants, but we don't have anybody on our board at that time with film expertise, I'll reach out to the film studies department at UNC and make sure that we've got, somebody with that expertise on the panel. So we do it for that reason, but we also do it for transparency because, it's important that outside people are a part of this and witnessing how it works and can, vouch that, we're not doing anything weird or shady. We're following a really stringent process and giving a really fair evaluation to every single applicant. One tricky thing, because we are in a small community, is that panelists are told to evaluate the grant based on the application and not their outside knowledge of you as an artist or an organization you're affiliated with. And again, it's hard because we all, especially in the arts, it's a small circle and we all know everybody. But I say that so that, you don't think, well, I'm NARAS. Everybody knows NARAS. I've been around doing the arts for a long time. NARAS needs to write her grant application like nobody knows who she is. So just keep that in mind and tell your story as if you're brand new and nobody knows who you are. So the process is I get all the applications out to the panelists a few weeks in advance. I task them with reviewing them and doing an initial score that is based on a rubric, which I'll share in a minute. And then we come together for our panel conversations, and then they have the opportunity to update their scores after those conversations happen. And then once we have the final scores for everybody, I bring that to our board meeting in August, and we kind of see how it all shakes out. And then that's when the board decides how they want to fund. Do they want to fund larger grants to fewer people, or smaller grants to more people. And it really varies year to year. I never know how they're going to go on that. One thing to know, my role is facilitator. I am not involved in scoring or who gets a grant or who doesn't. I can provide context, especially if we've had a one-on-one conversation about your grant and I feel like they're, maybe missing something and I've got information that would be helpful to them, although it's always going to just be, facts. I'm not providing, my opinion one way or the other. So the considerations, again, artistic quality, first and foremost, community impact of this project or program is very important. The multicultural aspect of the program, this is kind of a factor with the community impact score. And that is simply because, we want to fund programs that are serving all communities. So it's not a requirement, but it's a bonus, if your project is serving a multicultural community that, needs more arts experiences, then that's going to help your application. And then your ability to plan and implement. And that really is, garnered through your application. If it's very clear, you've got a lot of details and plans, and it's very clear that you've been working on this and doing your homework, you've got letters of support, your budget makes sense. Those are all indicators that you know what you're doing and, are going to be a good grantee. So the scoring rubric, 40% of the score is artistic merit, 30% is community impact, program management is 20%, and then compliance is 10%. Compliance factors in if you are a prior grant recipient of ours. If you're a new grant applicant, you get a full compliance score. We're kind of throwing you that as a new applicant. If you're a repeat grantee, this score is developed when you turn in your report, which, by the way, are due July 13th. So, we're looking at, if everybody could mute, I'm echoing. We're looking at, did you do what you said you were going to do? Did you properly credit us? And now you're going to have to credit the State Arts Council too if you end up getting state funding. When you get your grant, there's a cover sheet that says where your money's coming from. So if it's coming from the Arts Council, then you have to include the Arts Council's logo and credit line and the Arts Commission's logo. And every year this doesn't happen and I don't understand it. Mainly because, as an artist that's gotten a grant, I would think you would want those logos on there because it's giving you like credibility. And especially now that you can be getting, state arts council funding for your project, being able to have that logo on your poster out in the community, that's a big deal. So when I go and, every year I have to file my report with the State Arts Council and I have to submit all of the marketing materials that you guys give me through your report. And if it doesn't have those logos on it, I can't share it with them. So it's really, really, really important. And that's why we've added this compliance score. It's kind of a nudge to, do the things that you agree to do. So if you get funded, you'll get a contract through DocuSign online. You will be required to file a final report. It is not a difficult report. It's basically, who came, what were their demographics, and then give us samples of your marketing materials if that's relevant. It's not always relevant depending on the project. Thank you letters to our state elected officials and our Orange County Board of Commissioners. This is really, really encouraged right now. We have a new senator, Jonah Garson, who took Greg Meyer's place. Greg was, a former educator and was just 100,000% supportive of the arts. We met with Senator Garson at Arts Day this year, and I think we've got some work to do on, maybe informing him more about the arts community here. So all the more reason you need to send the letters and thank our electeds for the money that made this grant possible. Same with our county commissioners. I don't think that these budget cuts are going to change anytime soon. I think our economy is probably going to get worse before it gets better. I think funding cuts are going to be happening for the next few years. And so our commissioners really need to hear from y'all. They need to hear that, they need to hear what these grant funds have made possible and the people that they have helped. So they are still not a requirement, but strongly encouraged. And then, just willingness to show up. Like when we do the presentation at the county commissioners meeting in the fall, we really like everybody to be there. I love filling up that room. And then also, we're going to really be stepping up our advocacy efforts in this upcoming year. And we're probably going to be reaching out to some of our former grant recipients saying, hey, will you come speak for 2 minutes at a county commissioner meeting about a grant you received and what it did for you? Really getting in front of our county commissioners and making sure that they hear the impact of the arts and these grant programs. So applications again are due Tuesday, June 30th at 11:59. I'll show you in a second where you go to apply. Some FAQs. We've kind of already talked about this, but again, this program is for artist-led community programs. So if you need funding for your professional or artistic development, definitely apply to the Artist Support or Emerging Artist Grant. I think it's the Artist Support Grant opens up later this summer, and then the Emerging Artist Grant will open up later in the fall, or that I might have that flip-flopped. One opens in July, though. Some examples from last year. NARIS received a grant to hire performers at the community dinner in Carrboro that happens every year. Madeline Popkin, she received a grant to do an audio soundscape to explore the impact of underwater sound pollution. That was a really interesting project from last year. And then, another repeat grantee is Marie Rossetti and BJ Warshall at Level Artist Retreat. They always apply to us to either bring, like they used to live in New York, so they'll bring an artist from New York into our community to do a public art installation or an artist talk or an exhibit. This last year, they were offering residencies to local artists. And so they asked us for a grant to, support the artists that they chose for these residencies. And so they received a stipend, and it also helped offset their expenses in putting them up for a few days. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. You can go on our website and search grants, and you can see, every year we publish a list of all the grantees that have gotten a grant that year, and you can just see the wide variety of programs that are funded. Really, sky's the limit. If you got an idea, put it out there. Yes, you can receive grants multiple years in a row. The only exception is if you don't file your report. If you don't file your report, then you get kicked out of the running for the next year. So that's why, all of our panels take place after July 13th, because that's the due date for the reports. So that gives me time to make sure that all of our current applicants filed their report for the prior year. You can submit multiple applications for different projects. You know, historically, the funding for the artist project grant has been so low that I've never seen someone get multiple grants, because, you know, the funding just couldn't go that far. But now that we've got more funding to work with, that might actually happen. So if you've got, you know, 2 great ideas, then, and you've got the capacity to write 2 grants, then, you know, have at it. Matching funds, this is important. So again, in-kind donations can serve as a match. If somebody's donating you space or, you know, you've got like, you know, maybe a local media outlet is excited about your program and they've offered to give you free advertising. The value of that can count towards that match. What cannot be used as a match is a donation of artist time. We do not want artists donating their time. We want artists to be paid. And we all know those artists out there who would happily donate their time. And that is coming from nothing but generosity. But when we've got artists willing to donate their time, it's putting, you know, more hardship on those artists in our community that are trying to make a living through their art. Not everybody is in the situation where they can donate their art and their time, you know. So even if somebody says, I'm willing to donate my time, say, we're going to pay you anyway. If you want to donate that money to one of the working artists in our community who could really use it, then you do that. But we can never, you know, take donated time from working artists. So on the application, there is a budget and your revenue must equal your expenses. So it's all, it has to be a zero-based budget. And the reason for that is because we can't fund fundraisers. That's against the funding guidelines. And so if you're budgeting to make money off of this, that is not the kind of thing that we can fund. But then on the flip side, you know, you don't want to plan something that's going to lose money, and we certainly don't want to fund something that's going to lose money. So your revenue has to equal your expense. One thing that comes up pretty often is, you know, ticketed events. In the true spirit of this grant program, you would figure out a way to pay yourself and pay the expenses of the program and make it free to the community. Sometimes for various reasons that doesn't work, and you know, you gotta charge a ticket. First of all, that is probably gonna decrease the likelihood of getting funded, but also you just need to make sure that your budget still balances. And that's really hard when you're trying to estimate ticket sales, because we never really know, right? So the safest way to go is use the grant to pay yourself, pay your expenses, and then make that program free for the community. If you're working with other artists, but you haven't quite figured out yet who you're working with, that's okay. What I would recommend, if you've done similar projects or collaborations, even if they're not similar, if you've worked with other artists on different types of projects in the past, provide those work samples as examples. Yeah, that's really the best advice I can offer, is to just have something. If you don't provide any work samples, you'll be pulled out of the applicant pool, because again, when artistic merit is the #1 factor we're looking at, if there's no work samples to gauge that by, then we can't review the grant. So just make sure you have work samples no matter what. So just a few tips, be clear and concise. Just because a field in Submittable has up to 500 words doesn't mean you have to use 500 words. If you can answer a question in less than that, then that's great. Try new things. Overall, the board, I see them, they do sometimes fund the same project, but it's always when there's like a new component, or the artist or the organization can say that they've been evaluating the project and tweaking it. So it's not to say if you've got a really successful program that they're not going to continue to fund it, but they just want to see that you're continuing to evaluate it and improve it as you go. We can always improve. So just make sure if you're asking for something that has been funded before, that in the narrative you're explaining, how it's continuing to evolve and grow. And then again, get letters of support with community partners or other people that can attest to the quality of your work, especially if you're a new grant applicant. I think that that's especially important. So this is my information. If you need anything, I will say, we are moving back into the mill right now. We've got summer camp starting on Monday. We've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So it's my time is very limited, but I will help as much as I can. If I do get bombarded, I'm going to prioritize new applicants. So I'm just putting that out there, but I will try to help if I can. And then lastly, I just wanted to show you where to go to apply. We are getting a new website soon, but I don't think it'll be before you go to apply for the grant. So it's under grants. My screen's messing up. And then artist project grant. Up here will be the recording of this training. I will switch that link out probably tomorrow morning. And then all the guidelines that we've talked about. And then the application is through Submittable. I feel like it's such a standard grant platform that most folks have probably used it at this point, but if it's, tripping you up some way, let me know. One thing that we cannot help with is if you lose your password. We have no way of gaining access to, users. We only have access to our programs that we use Submittable for. So I can't help you if you lose your password. And, there's lots of required questions, so it's not like you can submit something without providing a really critical answer. Yeah, so that is about it. And I am going to stop sharing and open it up for questions.
I have a question about the letters of support. So does the
Yeah.
organization need to specify like kind of precisely the value of what they're donating, or do they just need to say like, hey, we're partnering and we're supporting this project?
I think that would be helpful if they could, but really it's, the most important thing is that they're saying that we are excited about this project. We're excited to welcome this artist into our space. It's more on you to figure out what that dollar value is and add that into your application.
That's helpful, thanks.
Sure.
Just thinking about, again, like lots of folks with summer camps starting and projects of like, would they have time to sit down and do that among their 10 billion other projects? So that's helpful for me to let them know.
And they will, you know, I get asked all the time to do letters of support for people, and I make the time to do it. It's important.
I also will just add as a piece of advice that sometimes it's helpful as the artist who knows more about your idea to offer some bullet points or a little draft summary of a letter that people can just tweak a little bit, and it saves them time. I had a couple questions, Katie.
Sure.
Are the artist project grants and the grassroots organizations and schools grants, now that we have this one bucket of funding, are they going to be considered together or still remain separate?
You know, I want to get my board's input on that. You know, and see it, because it is sort of an apples to oranges situation. And I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to compare, you know, an artist project grant up against a, you know, local nonprofit arts organization grant. So I think, and I won't know until I talk about this with my board, but I think probably what will happen is, you know, we do the process the same way that we always have, which is, you know, the performing arts panel evaluates the performing arts requests, no matter if they're organizations or they're artists. And then each panel is weighted to equal out, because, you know, some panels are just nicer than others. And we don't want somebody to be disadvantaged just because they were, you know, on the grumpy panel that year. So we weight everybody out. And then in the past, we've talked about the organizations first, and then we've talked about all the artists first. And that is the piece I'm not quite sure about. You know, I don't think I can say for sure they're not going to be evaluated against one another. But when it comes to parsing out the money and figuring out where do the artists fit within this, you know, these funding priorities, that I think is what we're going to have to figure out.
Okay, that makes sense. That's helpful. Yeah, I was just wondering how it would be, how the allocation would get sorted out, but sounds like you're still figuring that one out.
We are, for sure.
My other question is, and I'm sorry, I haven't looked at the application form yet, but do we select what type of project we're doing, like visual or performing arts? Is that a little box we check?
I can't remember. I go through and I flag everybody in submittable performing or visual arts,
Okay, gotcha.
but I can't remember if that's because I go in and read it and decide that, or if because you're checking a box. I don't think that there's a box, because sometimes it's everything. You know, there's projects every year that incorporate all, you know, all types of art.
Okay.
So yeah, I
Okay.
usually try to find the primary medium and align it with that panel. So if it's primarily performance, but you're adding in literary and visual, then I'm going to get you on the performing arts panel.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the question I have, Katie, is that I'm going to apply as an individual artist, and that employing the performers at the community dinner is my project as a separate entity from civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
and I paid them with my checkbook.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important community event.
Yes.
I think it's important that we're paying the people that are performing there. I would, you know, because you've gotten a grant now for this 2 times. Is that right?
No, yes, twice, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe just include in the application you know, something to indicate that, maybe you're hiring different artists this year.
Yeah, we
or-
always, we never and hire the same people twice. Very
Right.
rarely, yeah.
Yeah.
And we always look for new kinds of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody is so excited to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's made a difference to them and to us, you know. And it's a much more professional sort of discussion as well. And we
Yeah, it
also
is
pay our
important.
sound engineer.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
they're artists too.
Yeah, so we feel, the committee feels good about that we're hiring people who are being paid. And of course we feed them and all the families, you know, their
Yeah.
families. Yeah. So they have
I have a
a
couple questions.
good time. Mm.
Good.
Well, a
Yes.
couple more questions, I suppose. So, I guess I'll just do 'em rapid fire. So, one, I think you mentioned the ideal is having the program be free to the community. I'd be applying to do a performance, and in general, I'd want to charge some nominal amount of the tickets just to help reduce attrition between signups and attendance.
Mhm.
Not so
Yes.
much as
Yeah.
money-making venture, but just to encourage actual commitment. Like, would that
Yeah.
be frowned on, or would I just, like, emphasize that's the point versus, like, relying on it for revenue?
I think you should just explain that, and we all understand that. I mean, that's real. Free programs. Yeah. It is hard, especially when you're in a venue with limited space and you need to know if, I would just explain that and then just make sure that, maybe you do it on a sliding scale or um something along those lines, and then just make sure that you do project that little bit of revenue in your budget, and then you've got the offsetting expense to balance it out.
Makes sense. I mean, I guess technically I wouldn't even necessarily need to mention it, I suppose, if it's not a key area of income, but I guess it couldn't hurt, like you said, just to have a little bit. My second question, I think something not allowed for funding, it can't be food directly. Venue I'm thinking of, or I guess most of them actually, like they'll charge for staff time to man the
Right.
concession. Would that be something that's okay to be covered since it's not the food directly?
Yeah, as long as it's not the food and the beverages directly, staff time is absolutely valid.
Sweet, yay. Yeah, that's all for me. Thanks so much, Katie.
Sure.
And
Anybody
thank you
else?
for all your work on this, Katie. I think every year you get clearer on this somehow.
I don't feel very clear right now. Thank you for saying that. I feel like my brain is mush. I felt better this morning,
Ah.
but thanks. I hope. I mean, it is, I apply for a lot of grants too, and it is helpful when the facilitator can be clear. I do, there is this unknown factor this year though with this new funding and how the artists will factor into the overall applicant pool. So I'll have a clearer answer for that this time next year after we've been through it once, but it is interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. Fraser, you went upside down there for a second.
Actually,
I
go
ha-
ahead.
I have just a small clarification. If the project is an event and it's not ticketed, well, I guess the previous question related to this was also relevant, but say the event is a free event, would it be a no-no to also just accept donations by attendees?
No, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was my only question.
Yeah. And I just, with donations, that's really unpredictable. You have no way of estimating what that would be. So I probably would just not even include it in the budget.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Katie, I've got a few questions, but I also know we're right at the top of the hour.
No,
so
you're
I'd be
good.
happy to. Okay. Well, first isn't a question, but I was going to tell you that if you want a quick, easy way to sort of describe what type of art therapy you guys are covering. So, because that's something that like they teach us in graduate school. So there's art as therapy, and that's just the idea that I mean, what everyone is doing
Oh,
here
yeah.
is art
Okay.
as therapy. It's just going to a concert's therapeutic, going
Yeah.
dancing is therapeutic, painting a picture is therapeutic. So that's art as therapy, and then there's art psychotherapy, and that's what you really need a license for. Like I don't have a
Gotcha.
license. I'm an art therapist, but I don't have a license because North Carolina is difficult. So I mostly do artist therapy.
Okay. Gotcha. That's good. That's a good, that helps.
Okay. Yeah, I have to explain it all the time about what I can and can't do because I'm not licensed. So what I'm thinking of for this grant is I want to sort of move in a slightly different direction with some of my work. So I need to buy some equipment, but I do a lot of different grants with different communities in the different groups in our community. So the equipment would be used in multiple projects. And so the funding from those other projects would pay me. Would that work for me being paid as opposed to, like, say, like if I get a grant to do work in the schools through the Public School Foundation, they're paying me. So does that count as like matching funds where I get my,
I think as long as it's all part of the same project, then yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but with the equipment, that also, we funded mini grants where, like, I'm thinking about, Don Hummer one year got a grant to purchase like 12 mobile looms that she
Yeah.
took into like the senior centers and taught weaving with these looms for free, and there's been a
So
few
it's okay
others
that
like that.
she was teaching it for free, but you guys paid for the looms. So
Yeah.
that's okay. Okay, because
Yeah.
I do some pro bono work where I would definitely use this equipment. So the other
Yeah.
things are like I don't find out about the grades till September anyway. There's one other question, and now I forgot what it is, so I'll have to. My brain's also fried too. But yeah, it'll come back to me, and I'll email you.
Can I just say one thing, that if you do get the grant, you have to pay tax on it.
I know. I don't
And
love that.
that's something everybody has to know, that you get your 1099 and it becomes
the
part of your
county,
income.
I don't think the county used to send 1099s for grants. I think that's a recent.
Yeah, I got one and I had to declare it as income. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I just don't love that.
So the
if you
question
end up
is,
review-
you are giving, you're paying tax on this grant and you're supporting the artists, even though you're paying them. Some of that is your own money, going in there.
Yeah. It's tricky.
You can document that even, maybe.
Katie, I just thought of my other question.
Yeah, depending on how much you get, but but I had to submit it to the tax guy.
Yeah. Yeah, Bridget.
So a little over a year ago, I got a grant, the economic development grant. And I know when they gave me that, like they took off a chunk of what I applied for because I had gotten a grant with you guys the year before. With the fact that I got, because I know they do their cycle, like you have to wait 3 years or something, but would that affect me getting money through this grant cycle?
No, and I don't know why that I gotta talk to them about that. Cause I mean, especially now that this money's coming from the state, it's not, and I don't view it as double dipping, like,
I think their idea was that it's all Orange County money, and they sort of had a cap on how much money they wanted to give me as an Orange County resident, which I mean, it's fine. I was still able to do what I wanted to do. So,
well, I still don't
but
love it.
I don't want to go through the process of applying this year just to have them say, no, that girl's already gotten enough. Leave her alone.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, we certainly don't do that. You know,
Okay.
we don't ask, are you getting a small business grant from economic development? I mean, you know, we want to just get as much money into the hands of artists as possible. So,
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the budget section of the application.
sure.
Where would, I guess actually two questions. I think in the expenses, what are outside fees and services? And also where would the value of in-kind donations go? I assume you put that in income, but just put that under like other revenue?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I don't have it here in front of me, but if the in-kind was space and there's a space for space, if there is a, you know, category for rental fees, you know, you would put it there. Outside fees and services, that could mean everything from, you know, you're paying a sound guy to you're printing brochures to market your program. It's kind of a catch-all for things that don't fall in those other categories.
I guess where I'm a bit confused about the in-kind, like would you put that under
Here,
expenses?
let me
See what I mean? Where
no,
like space rental is under the budgeted expense. So if the
in-kind would
in-kind
go
donation
under,
was of the space, there's not one for like space under income. Does that make sense?
well, in-kind would go into income and not expense.
Yeah, there's not a category for like space under budgeted income in the cells there.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah, it might be helpful to go look at it.
Hmm.
So say there's a venue that's gonna donate its, I don't know, performance hall. What would I put that under the income one?
So in that specific instance, I would probably put it under other revenue.
Okay.
And in the explanation field, just put, you know, concert hall, value
In-kind
of donation or in kind. Yeah. And then, you know, under that, I know it's a little misleading because it says cash income, but you would still put the value of that donation under that cash income column.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
Thank you. I think you must be exhausted, Katie.
I'm tired.
Mm.
But all right. Well, if y'all have any other questions, let me know.
Thank you so
The
much.
quickest way to get me is email.
Take
Okay.
care.
All
Yeah,
right,
thank you
y'all.
so much for the
Katie.
info
Good
session.
night,
Have a good
everybody.
night.
Nice
Have a good
to
night.
meet everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you,
Bye.
Katie. Nice to see everyone.